If you were an 18th century sailor, you would not last a day. Not because of scurvy or storms or the occasional cannon fire, though those were career hazards, but because you'd almost certainly have no idea where you were. And if you did, it would be by accident. Your survival, your salary, and your skull depended on one unspectacular fact: keeping time. Not metaphorically, not time management or seizing the day, literally. Measuring 60 minutes accurately enough to know your longitude, your place east or west of home, was the single most valuable number on Earth. It separated the grounded from the lost, the fleet from the wreckage. And to our modern minds, that's boring. That's part of the magic. Because your brain, right now, searching for something soothing amid insomnia, releases a small sigh when given slow, heavy facts. So tonight, we will wind the spring of history, quietly, precisely, until your mind settles into a steady tick-tick. Before we step into the workshop, let's tune the instrument you. You are lying still, but imagine you are a pendulum, suspended by a fine thread above calm water. Your chest rises and falls. Each inhalation tilts you east. Each exhalation returns you west. A gentle oscillation. Isochronous, if you wish, each swing taking the same time. A perfect little miracle first noticed by Galileo around 1580 when he watched a cathedral lamp sway. He wasn't meditating. He was bored during Mass. And boredom, as you'll soon learn, is the birthplace of clocks. Feel your limbs grow heavier: ankle, calf, thigh, hip, each joint a weight, each muscle unwinding. The heart keeps time, the breath maintains phase, the body a biological escapement. You are now in rhythm with the past. You are standing in a cramped workshop in Lincolnshire, England. The air smells faintly of brass dust, whale oil, and oak. There is a low drone, the hum of a wheel lathe turned by foot. Your eyes adjust to the dim candlelight, and you realize this is not a scene from a period drama. This is daily life for John Harrison, a carpenter turned clockmaker, sometime around the year 1720. He is not famous yet, he is just tired, and sanding a piece of wood to a tolerance of 1/1000th of an inch, because he believes wood might keep time better than metal. It's a controversial opinion. He will defend it for years. A marine chronometer, the device that would one day tell sailors where they are, begins here, not in a palace, not a laboratory, but in this drafty shed. That gear seems simple, but if we look closer, really closer, every tooth tells a tragic story of friction. When metal touches metal, time itself is consumed. A 0.1 millimeter unevenness on one surface means a 5-second error over a day. To a sailor lost in fog, that was the difference between making landfall or discovering Newfoundland instead of France. You can picture Harrison hunched over a brass wheel, whispering to himself that if friction eats time, then perhaps a better escapement can feed it back. He builds hundreds, until one day his workshop's walls are lined with the past in circles of gears and the future in sketches of hands. And you are watching him work. You reach out to steady the frame of the movement, the balance wheel shimmering faintly as it swings. You can almost feel it, the heartbeat of precision. The escapement is the heartbeat of any mechanical clock. It sounds serene, but it's really a nervous negotiation between motion and control, force and pause. The escapement's job is simple. It lets a gear train escape one tick at a time, converting continuous energy into discrete motion. Here, the pallet stones, or anchors, rock back and forth between the teeth of the escape wheel, releasing power in tidy increments. This tiny rhythmic violence creates order. Every sound tick-tick is one impulse forward, one small act of rebellion against entropy. Every escapement tells a story of someone who didn't trust chaos. Harrison will later design what he calls the grasshopper escapement, a clever piece of overcomplicated elegance. It requires no oil, because he doesn't trust oil either. Oil thickens in cold weather, thins in heat, betraying sailors at sea. You can imagine Harrison glaring at a bottle of whale oil as if it had personally insulted him. Gentle chuckle. But tonight, as you breathe steadily, you might find yourself admiring his stubbornness. Imagine being awake at midnight, recalibrating a screw because the sea refuses to synchronize with your clock. At this point, your eye catches something new, a coiled wire, shimmering faintly like a snail shell of steel. This is the balance spring, or the hairspring. Its discovery was one of those accidents of brilliance that annoyed everyone else. Christiaan Huygens, the Dutch mathematician, described it in the 1,670 seconds. Before him, pendulums were excellent until you put them on a moving ship. Then they became less timekeeper and more tiny seasick swing. The balance spring changed everything. It let the timekeeper tick on a rolling deck. Isochronism, the equality of swings, whether large or small, was now portable. Harrison, of course, will not leave this alone. He constructs balance assemblies that breathe like lungs, compensating for temperature, humidity, and human impatience. He worries about brass shrinking in cold and steel, expanding in heat. He knows a degree of temperature difference will change everything. You might think he was obsessive. You'd be right. And you'd also owe him your GPS. Once you look long enough at the balance wheel, you start to feel your own heartbeat sync with it, a quiet reciprocity, one mechanical, one biological, both trying not to lose time. The tools are simple, the tolerances are not. Tweezers blackened by soot so they won't glare under lamplight. Files so fine they can remove time itself in the form of metal shavings. Calipers made by men whose eyesight was better than their dental hygiene. And in the corner, a clock whose sound has stopped. That's how you know it's ready to begin. The sensory reality of horology was never glamorous. Oil stains on wool sleeves, soot on fingertips, magnifying lenses leaving red marks on noses. And yet, you, listener, are standing here in that dim light, a time traveller among the brass and mahogany. The calm repetition of winding screws becomes its own lullaby. This is the daily grind, not the metaphorical one, the literal, gear against gear grind that holds civilization together one fraction of a second at a time. Imagine time not as a river, but as a machine wound by hand. Each of us keeps time with our own resistance, our own springs tightened by urgency, then unwound by rest. Even this story follows a gear train. Ideas turning into actions, actions polished into precision. Harrison, though he doesn't know it yet, will build 4 great marine timekeepers, H1 through H4. Each will weigh less, swing faster, and tick truer. But tonight we meet him at the moment before greatness. In the stillness of his workshop, sanding, filing, adjusting, cursing gently under his breath. The world sleeps around him. The Navy awaits a miracle. And somewhere, centuries forward, you listen to the soft tick-tick of his patience, the sound that taught the oceans to stay put. You, the listener, are now aboard a wooden ship in 1714. The deck creaks beneath your feet. Nothing seems still. Even the lamps sway their light, bending like time itself, elastic, uncertain. The captain walks the deck with brows furrowed, tracing imaginary lines on an invisible globe. Longitude, his position east or west, exists only as distrust and approximation. His maps, like his faith, are sketches. Then a call from the Admiralty, a longitude prize, £20,000, an astronomical sum offered by Parliament to anyone who could solve the greatest scientific problem of the age: how to find longitude at sea. You might think this sparked a frenzy. It did, the wrong kind. Physicists proposed cloudy arrays of Jupiter's moons. Astronomers argued for lunar distances. Geometers demanded new mathematics. Each believed the answer was elegant, cosmic, theoretical. But one man, a carpenter named John Harrison, believed the answer was mechanical. And his hands, calloused and patient, would one day make the cosmos tick in brass and steel. The beginning of obsession. You find him again, back in that wooden workshop, around 1725. His first clock, H1, is still a series of drawings, part intuition, part stubborn geometry. Harrison does not know it yet, but he is about to spend 4 decades trying to prove one idea: a clock can outthink the sea. He tests a model pendulum clock, first mounted on oak beams, using his frictionless grasshopper escapement. It moves lightly, clicking with insect precision, hence the name. It's a miracle of low resistance. But there's a problem, one so small it could fit under a candle flame: temperature drift. Brass expands, steel contracts, springs breathe in weather. A second today could be 4 miles tomorrow. You can almost feel Harrison's shoulders tighten with each misalignment. His search isn't for beauty, it's for sameness. To him, perfection is boring, perfectly, repeatably, mathematically boring. When you picture a clock, perhaps you see gleaming brass, cold metal, factory polish. Harrison's early clocks were made of oak. Wood, yes, the very same substance ship carpenters used. He reasoned logically, though humorously, that wood, when well seasoned, was resistant to corrosion, self-lubricating, and less reactive to temperature. His intuition was right often enough to annoy his critics. Each wheel in H1, carved with exaggerated care, feels alive. The frame breathes slightly as humidity changes, but instead of ruining the motion, it compensates for it. Imagine that a machine that swells and shrinks, in tune with the world. Standing before it now, you can sense its quiet absurdity, a marine chronometer carved from the forest. Harrison's son William later described those days as hours upon hours of wood dust and arithmetic. Still, the result works barely. H1 ticks steadily on land, but at sea? That's where wood meets salt, and the elements gossip maliciously about expansion coefficients. Let's pause here before the next failure. The irony is this: in trying to measure time so carefully, Harrison lost count of his own. Each failure demanded years, each improvement invited ridicule. The Board of Longitude preferred gentlemen of astronomy Cambridge, men who spoke fluently of lunar parallax and spherical geometry. Harrison, with his calloused hands and quiet accent, was an outsider. But he spoke the truth of clocks. The smaller the motion, the bigger the error. He believed the human hand could compete with celestial tables. Now we move forward. 1737. Harrison completes the first marine timekeeper to truly move with the sea. The H1 is born a tangle of bars, balances, and counterweights, large enough to fill a desk, yet astonishingly graceful. It's tested on a voyage to Lisbon. The captain reports, "She goes extremely easy and free." The timekeeper performs well, but not immortally. It gains and loses seconds in rhythm, with the ship's heartbeat good, but not £20,000 good. Harrison sighs, perhaps utters words not fit for polite company, and returns home to build H2. H2 is heavier, bolder, and it fails spectacularly. A simple oversight, a design flaw that introduces friction where freedom was meant to reign. It is almost comical. You could imagine Harrison muttering, "too perfect to work," which is the kind of phrase only a clockmaker would understand. But failure, in his world, is symphonic. Every tick that dies tells him which note was wrong. While others chase lunar navigation with telescopes and awkward sextants, Harrison files away his mistakes in neat, labelled wooden drawers. He doesn't yet know this, but these early failures will form the skeleton of H4, the pocket-sized genius yet to exist. Outside the workshop, England shifts from candlelight to coal smoke. Inside, Harrison builds a bimetallic strip before the word existed. Two different metals, joined, bending with heat, cancelling each other's whimsy. He doesn't call it compensation, he calls it justice. Temperature no longer dictates drift. The balance remains defiantly steady, as though mocking the season itself. Here lies the secret of H4, a clock that will not lie. Decades pass. In 1759, after 40 years of iteration, the world's first functional marine chronometer emerges H4. It doesn't look like a ship's instrument. It looks like a large pocket watch encased in silver. But it is alive with compensated balance, jeweled bearings, temperature control, and a force remontoire that keeps power constant even as the mainspring relaxes. You, standing beside Harrison, notice his hands tremble slightly as he adjusts the escapement. Not from age, from awe. For the first time in his life, time itself obeys him. Yet the Board of Longitude, still sceptical, demands a trial voyage. The Deptford to Jamaica trip becomes the most quietly dramatic journey in nautical history. H4 keeps time to within 5 seconds of perfection after 81 days at sea. 5 seconds. In 18th century engineering, that was heresy-level accuracy. The sailors cheer, the board hesitates, the prize remains unpaid, bureaucracy ticks slower than clocks. Isaac Newton predicted in 1714 that no clock shall ever serve for longitude. If the great man could see H4, he might sigh, raise an eyebrow, and calculate a graceful retreat from certainty. Harrison's revenge is quiet. 5 seconds of defiance against Newton's prophecy. He doesn't gloat. He builds another. Now, here's the mystery we'll leave hanging for half an hour unsolved for the listener, as Harrison left it unsolved for the world. How did he build H4's balance to resist every force? Gravity, motion, humidity, prejudice? How did one self-educated craftsman tune brass and steel to whisper in harmony across 80 days of salt and pitch? We won't answer yet. The answer requires patience, like filing a tooth by lantern light. Instead, we drift with him through late nights, through the whine of the lathe and the soft smell of oil and despair. He will not live to see universal acceptance of his machine, but his son will carry the proof, a small silver watch that hums like an idea refusing sleep. Some say that as Harrison grew older, he began to find small jokes in his work. That time, after all, was just humanity's polite argument with chaos. He once remarked, and this is true enough to trust, that the most reliable part of a clock was the person winding it. Everyone needed something to do daily to prove they still existed. You might smile at that, even now, lying in bed, listening to the faint echo of his gears across history. You might even envy his obsession's simplicity, one lifetime, one goal, no internet comments. He measured his worth one tooth at a time, and so the story winds forward, its pendulum tracing wider arcs, from cosmic navigation to microscopic correction. What began as a sailor's dream now becomes a craftsman's meditation. His tools, tweezers, blued screws, balance wheels, all whisper the same word: patience. Next, we'll open the old manuals. We'll read very slowly the assembly of a mechanical soul. A watch movement described not as invention, but as ritual. There's a particular piece that lives in technical description. Too much emotion disrupts the gears. Too much noise muddies the oil. So imagine this. You're seated before a wooden workbench in 1904. The sun outside has turned to amber syrup filtered through the fogged glass of an attic window. The room smells faintly of brass, cotton, and carbonized oil. Before you lies the 19-Linge Omega caliber, a textbook movement, perfectly ordinary and therefore hypnotic. And an instruction reads simply: assemble with care, nothing resists patience. You roll up your sleeves. The tools glint like muted stars. This is today's meditation, assembling a machine so precise that reality must pause occasionally to watch. You begin with the main plate, the foundation, the bedrock of time itself. It is a thin, cold sheet of brass, polished smooth as an argument with no conclusion. The main plate doesn't move. Everything else dances upon it. Application. Into this surface go the jewels, the posts, the train of wheels. Framing, it is stillness organizing motion, a paradox too perfect to question. Your fingertips brush across its tiny recesses. You whisper under your breath the names of each hole: center wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, escape wheel. Each depression defines the flow of seconds like riverbeds carved by invisible patience. The plate feels cool at first touch, then grows warm under your skin, a reminder that timekeeping begins with temperature. Warmth itself is expansion. Next, the barrel. This is the power cellar of the universe. Within, a flat steel ribbon, the mainspring waits to uncoil. You lift it carefully with oiled tweezers. It resists slightly, that coiled defiance of potential energy. If it slips, it will snap and sting, like a lesson too quickly learned. Wind it tight, turn by turn, and drop it into the barrel. Then close the lid, sealing centuries of mechanical hope inside one round cage. Now you realize, every clock hides violence under calm faces. Even equilibrium has tension coiled inside it. The gears are almost weightless. Gold, if you can afford it. Brass, if reality intervenes. You pick up the center wheel, large and elegant. The third wheel, smaller, connects politely. Then the fourth, translating minutes into seconds with unending diplomacy. Finally, the escape wheel, irregular and toothy, waiting to quarrel lovingly with the pallet fork. The pattern is exact. Each wheel must not only fit, it must agree. A disagreement of 1 micron ruins the chorus. Tiny rubies, synthetic, bloodless gleam like dew on metal. They reduce friction by a fraction invisible to the eye. Without them, the watch would age in weeks. With them, it might outlive its maker. It's poetic, really, our species drilling holes in jewels, all for the sake of smoother seconds. Sometimes you wonder, when the watchmaker breathes, does the dust settle in time with his pulse? Now comes the soul, the escapement, that fluttering heart of logic and rhythm. The escape wheel advances 1 tooth at a time. The pallet fork, shaped like a tuning fork for tiny ethics, releases and locks force in alternating grace. The balance wheel rebounds tick, then reverses tick. Together, they perform the ancient negotiation between motion and moderation. Listen closely. Tick tick, not tick-tock. The second syllable never existed. It was a poetic illusion created by people outside the workshop. Mechanically speaking, a watch only says, evenly, tick-tick, each half a moment of motion and restraint. To make the escapement fair, you test isochronism, the constancy of its beat, fast or slow. Too little amplitude, and the motion starves. Too much, and it drowns itself in enthusiasm. You alter the hairspring's attachment, shortening one coil, breathing out as you do. The watch answers back with a steadier rhythm. Some scientists claim the beat of a mechanical watch resembles a human resting heart. If that's true, you've just tuned life into metrical accuracy. The balance assembly is magic concealed as math. U-shaped cutouts filled with gold screws shimmer faintly, each adjusts the wheel's moment of inertia. A heavy watch beats slow, a light one, fast. There's a laugh here somewhere about human behaviour, but we'll let it glide by unnoticed. When you breathe near the mechanism, it responds. The air alone perturbs the amplitude. And that's when you realise, perfection on paper must live in imperfection in practice. The best watch isn't flawless, it's forgiven. A remontoire is a secondary spring, a small, proud device that breathes power in even size. Every 30 seconds, it rewinds itself from the mainspring's tension, refusing fatigue. Imagine if we could do the same, absorb stress in bursts, then release it cleanly. Machines know self-care better than people. You turn the movement over, fitting the pristine enamel dial to the brass pillars. 3 holes await, hour, minute, second. Blued steel hands, heated in flame till they blush sapphire, are pressed gently down. They quiver slightly alive once more, with restrained urgency. When the watch finally breathes, its tick synchronizes the silence around you. You sense the universe nodding in approval. The final observation. A chronometer, finished and cased, is less a tool than an attitude. It whispers. Accuracy is kindness in steel form. Each tick confirms the laws of physics still hold. That order still outweighs entropy most days. You close the watch back and hold it to your ear. The sound isn't loud, but it owns the room. Each beat says, you are still here, you are still measured, you are still in time. You wake slowly. The 19th century has dawned. The world now runs on time, not the sun, not the seasons, but clockwork. Where once the ocean was the slow frontier, now the factory bell rings in the cities. Trains need timetables, ships need synchronization, clerks need to arrive before the ink dries. And every worker, from Birmingham to Boston, owns a cheap version of Harrison's dream ticking in their pocket. No one remembers the carpenter from Lincolnshire anymore. But every heartbeat of industry owes him a debt. That is history's rhythm gratitude hidden behind gears. At the top of the hill, a wealthy merchant checks his chronometer. It gleams like captured sunlight. It runs 3 seconds fast. He will complain about this. Down the hill, a factory worker listens for the whistle. His day begins when precision commands it. Timekeeping, once a private obsession for explorers and kings, has become a public leash. The watch has escaped the pocket of the academy and slipped quietly into every apron and vest. To be late is now a moral failing. To waste a minute, a small betrayal of the invisible empire of seconds. You can feel the tick-tick echo through the streets. Each one a declaration, you belong to the schedule now. Here's the paradox the historians rarely mention. The more precisely we measured time, the less of it we seem to have. A man in 1820 could spend an afternoon adjusting a clock hand. A man in 2020 apologizes for a 2-second delay in a meeting he didn't want to attend. Progress, apparently, is punctual. And so the tick-tick became not just a heartbeat, but a heartbeat under supervision. An entire civilization trained itself to listen. Somewhere deep inside the Royal Observatory, a pendulum still swings with perfect indifference. It doesn't care about profit margins or factory whistles. Its arc remains true, a perfect, lazy swing just long enough to lull thought itself. You can almost hear it now. Tick, tick. Each swing marking the border between noise and silence. That pendulum knows something we forgot, that precision and peace once lived together. Here is the boring fact of the night, so boring that it completes itself like a spell. Every mechanical watch on Earth owes its rhythm to isochronism, the principle that a small oscillation and a large one take the same time. It's the law that let us divide eternity into minutes. And now that you understand the spring, you'll never see the pendulum the same way. But that is a story for tomorrow night. Let's power down the mechanism slowly, deliberately. The gears rest, the oil cools, the escapement softens its chatter until memory itself feels lubricated. You feel your breath align with the mechanical world for the last time tonight. Now we count not to launch, but to land. 10. The air grows heavier, each inhale slower. You are the balance wheel winding down. 9. Your hands loosen, the muscles unthread from bone like silk off a spool. 8. Under your eyelids, warmth spreads. You drift across centuries of ticking, from Harrison's bench to your nightstand clock. 7. Tick-tick, the sound of completed work. Tick-tick, the sound of nothing left undone. 6. Gravity releases its argument with your body. You float, poised like a suspended pendulum at the top of its swing. 5. The oil on the pivots congeals polite, content. 4. Every sound in the room finds rhythm. The hum of air, the far-off car, the pulse in your temple. 3. Even thoughts slow to minute hands, steady and circular. 2. The tick fades. The moment between beats lengthens, generous. 1. Stillness. 0. Somewhere, a pocket watch rests on a wooden shelf, its mainspring half wound. The last turn of its key was made by someone who trusted time to keep itself. And perhaps, just before sleep, you exhale softly, as the world continues, perfectly synchronized, perfectly absurd, perfectly calm.